Okay, once at the remote website, you can enter your username, which is usually an email address, and your password, and log in. Okay. Once logged in, you'll see a list of your sessions, and you can, if you are active, you can hit Control to take control of the session. Here we see the general user interface screen. Along the bottom are mainly informational buttons. Release control would allow another user to take control. Ring current is the current that is in the ring at the time in milliamps. Energy and electron volts. If you're on 24 IDC, you can double click this to change the energy. Flux in arbitrary units, you should see something up in the 100,000s count if there is actual X-rays coming into the hutch. X-beam and Y-beam positions are just informational, but what you want to see is that they generally are not yellow. If there is no beam in the hutch, both of those should be yellow. That's an indication that either the shutter has been not open or beam has been lost. Auto line timer is a countdown to a recommended time when you should run an auto alignment, and to run auto alignment you simply double click on the button as shown here. This will ask you to confirm the auto align. You can hit confirm, or if you don't want to do it, just hit cancel. We'll go ahead and confirm. Sure. During the auto alignment, what you'll see is if you have a crystal mounted, it's moved out of the X-ray beam, although it's still kept in the cold stream. And a mask comes up, and eventually you'll see the X-ray beam illuminated on the phosphor screen, and the computer runs a routine to find the center of that X-ray beam and align it so that the oval that you see on your centering screen is lined up with the X-rays that are incoming into the system. During the auto alignment, all of the controls for centering and sample selection should be grayed out, and then after auto alignment is completed, control will be returned to the user. The first thing when auto alignment completes, you'll notice the X-ray beam is no longer visible, and then eventually you'll see your sample move back if it's mounted. And once the controls are returned to active, you're ready to proceed. You should also get a message that auto alignment is complete. Okay. Just covering the other buttons down, or information at the bottom, is percent transmission is the current transmission being allowed through the apertures. The aperture size is indicated down here. If you double click, you can select from the 3 different apertures in the available on the triple aperture for the MD2. Simply select and hit confirm to change the aperture size. Right now I'll go ahead and load up the first sample. Samples can be selected by drop-down menu. For example, we're going to mount F1 and then confirm at the bottom. Initial samples should be selected by selecting the puck and the sample name, and then confirming. Once a sample is mounted, if you just want to go to the next or the previous one, up on the left hand you can use the previous or next button, and they will go in sequence. So for example, once F1 is mounted, if I press next, F1 will be dismounted, and then F2 will be mounted. And if you're at F16, then the next would go to the next puck, so in this case G, and then mount the first sample in that puck. You notice you get a status bar as you're mounting the sample, telling you that the robot's busy. This is just an indicator that something's going on. The progress bar is not necessarily synchronized with the amount of time it actually takes to do the mount. And once you finish mounting, you should hear a ding. Once you see the sample is mounted, you can then initiate 3-click centering by pressing the 3-click button and then moving over to the video screen and clicking on the position you want to center. It will then rotate the crystal. You click a second time, it will rotate the crystal again, and then click a third time and it will center those 3 points. Sometimes it takes more than one round of centering. And then after centering at a zoom level of 1, which is where it should be set after a mount, usually you increase the zoom to some level between 4 and 6, unless you have really small crystals, and then do a final centering. If you need to manually adjust the position of the crystal, you can use the crosshairs over on the left side. The arrows closest to the center do a small movement, while arrows farther out do larger movements. It's still recommended, though, for centering that you rely on the 3-click. Rotation of omega axis can be controlled over on the right, either by double-clicking and entering a number and then hitting return, or by using the arrows to do a ±5 degrees at the closest, or ±45 at the farther arrows, and then along the bottom ±90 and 180 degree. Once your crystal is satisfactorily centered, you can then take a snapshot by clicking on, under data collection, the snap. This brings up the snapshot constructor, where you can enter in a prefix for your snapshot. You can adjust the indexing of the image number, and also just initial frame parameters such as the initial omega, your oscillation angle, your exposure time in seconds, your transmission for the beamline, and the detector distance. For 24 IDE, we recommend, if using a 50 micron aperture, using a transmission of 5%. For 24 IDC, using a 70 micron, you can also do that. If you desire to take a pair of snaps which are separated by a certain oscillation angle, you can click on Paired Snap Acquisition On, and then the pair offset can be set by selecting 45, 90, or 180. Generally 90 degrees is the one that's used. If you change the detector distance, then the resolutions given for over on the right for edge and corner should be updated with the distance. Once your parameters are set, everything's satisfactory, you can hit execute to collect the data. So 2 images have been created, And now that control has been returned, those images have been collected, we can go and view those by going to the View Images tab. And they should be these listed in order, or reverse chronological order, so most recent images are at the top of the list. And we can see here we're looking at the second of the two images right now, and we can select other images by clicking on their names over on the left side. On the image screen, resolution will be updated from the center of the screen as you mouse over different spots. Image information as far as the collection parameters are given under image data. Auto indexing results are taken from Rapid. These may take a while to upload after the initial data collection, depending on how fast Rapid processes the data. You can also zoom in over under controls using the 1x, 2x, or 3x, and then pan around by using the scroll bars along the side of the image window. Okay. If you press the Image Viewer button, a new window should open up, allowing you to view images in a separate web page. This may be useful for monitoring images while also manipulating the centering or doing data collection. Returning back to the Data Collection tab, you can turn the backlights on by clicking Main under Lights so that you can visualize your crystal again. If you need to recenter, now would be the time. Okay. If you desire to do any vector scanning, you need to define the ends of your vector. You would do this by doing a 3-click centering on each end. So I'll do that now. Once you have your desired endpoint centered, you would click on Save, and you get an indication of the number of points saved. You need at least two points to define the vector. More points can be added to provide a more accurate vector if you desire. So now that I've saved the 2 vector points, the program draws those 2 points as X's and then a line between the two. You can now, if you do a data collection run, it will automatically turn on vector options, assuming that you want to do a continuous vector scan. You can adjust the insets, positive insets, move the end of the vector in towards the center. Negative insets would move the vector out towards the end of the points. You can also define your run parameters, the starting frame number, total number of frames, detector distance, percent transmission, initial omega, your delta omega, your exposure time in seconds, and then the omega range. You can, if you adjust that, should adjust your total number of frames accordingly, or if you adjust your total number of frames, the omega range is adjusted. If you don't desire to do a continuous vector at this point, you can turn the vector option off, and now it would do just a single point data collection at the last point that was centered. We'll go ahead and do a continuous vector scan. We turn the vector option back off, and we're going to hit. We're going to do a short 20 frame. Data collection, and we're going to adjust our distance to 400 because that's the current distance. And in this case, we only need about 1% transmission. So check my parameters. Also give your run a prefix. And then hit execute. During the data collection run, you can move over to view images, and as the images are collected, they will appear on the image screen here. Okay, we've gotten ourselves in a situation where the beamline is not responding to our commands. So what we're going to do is go to Tools. Under User Interface Control, the first thing to try is to hit Restart Rack. This resets the connection to the remote access channel at the beamline. You can then return to Data Collection tab, and if you have control, at this point you can try and turn the lights on or off to determine whether or not you actually have control of the beamline or not. In this case, all of our commands are still grayed out. So we're going to go back to Tools, and we're going to try and restart console. And you get an informational that you've requested a restart of console, and basically at this point you want to wait until you get the second informational that says restarted console aux script. At this point we should have control back, and I can confirm that by using the light switch. I can turn the lights on and off. That means I have control. So we're going to go ahead and try and I'm just going to center the center of the crystal. We're going to go to data collection and set up a run. We have a vector defined, but in this case we're going to actually turn that off. We'll give the run a prefix name. I'm going to check my parameters again. Again, I don't want a long run because this is just a demonstration. So I'm going to collect 20 frames at a distance of 400 millimeters. 1% transmission starting at a omega angle of 0, using 1 degree oscillation angles for each frame over a 1 second time period. Again, check your parameters, make sure they're what you want, and then hit execute. Once data is started collecting, where your flux information is given should turn yellow, indicating that, and there's a little informational say collecting data at the bottom. And if you go to View Images tab, you should then still be able to see those images coming in as they're collected. If you want to look at a specific image, you can double click on that, and that locks that frame in, which you can tell it's locked in because there's a red background around it. And then if I click on any other one, it no longer has that red background behind the image, and it will update with the new incoming images. Run images are distinguished from snapshot images by being indented, and then underneath the name of the run, which is in yellow. That list of images can be compressed by simply clicking on the name of the run. It will no longer show the individual images. If you want to see those again, you can just click back on the run name, and that list of images comes up. So our data collection is complete, and if we go back to Data Collection tab, all of our controls are now active again. So at this point, we can move on to our next crystal. Changing the sample by pressing Next will dismount the current sample and move to the next one in sequence. Going back to view the images from the run, integration results from Rapid, once they are completed, will be imported into the remote system and displayed over on the right here, giving you a summary of the results of the integration. Well, we're still waiting for the crystal to mount. If you go to Tools and you go under Chat, you can send messages to anyone else logged into the system by simply typing a message and then hitting Send. A list of all sent messages and who sent the message will be listed on the left here. And then anyone logged in will get a pop-up window up in the right area here. You can also pull out the chat into a window. This window will stay active even if I return to, say, Data Collection tab. And this allows me to maintain communication with user support or anyone else who's logged into the system. And I can simply move that chat window anywhere I want that's convenient and out of the way. So our next crystal is up. Again, we just use 3-click to center the sample. And if the chat window's in the way, just move it out.
Just tell that they need to dismount the crystal and log off.
When you're finished with your session, if you still are in control, you'll want to dismount your sample by coming up to Change Sample, click on Other, and then under Options there's the Unmount. If you click on that and then hit Confirm, it will dismount your current sample. And once you've told it to dismount, you can actually log out of your session at that point, or you can wait for the sample to be dismounted. It doesn't really matter. To log out, you can either refresh your window or simply close down your browser. And in this case, we'll just go ahead and hit the refresh button. It brings you back to the login screen, but you're now logged out and control has been released for the system. If you're in need of a new password, for instance a new user, or if you've lost the password that you had, you can come down and hit Password Recovery. Clicking on that, you'll want to type in the email that was used for your username. Once you type in your email, then you hit the button that says Request, and an email will be sent with a new temporary password. In this case, I don't need to reset my password, so I'm just going to close. Down here you can also check APS status. This brings up the current status of the beamline, telling you whether there's any current stored in the ring and the lifetime, and if there was a dump or loss of beam, updates will be given and the dump trip reason along with information on potential for the next fill. Once you're finished with your data collection time, we'd also like you to fill out an end of run form.